Okay, today it's going to be everything nuts and bolts. Let's start off with the style of bolts, okay? These are M6. These bolts are 6 millimeters across. That's why their name is M6. So you can see here, when you measure it across, it is 6 millimeters, okay? That has to do with the width across of the bolts, so that is called an M6. Now this one here, you see this head on it, this is called a flat head or a taper head cap screw, okay? So this would be an M6 by, and I'm going to measure it, this one would be an M6 by 20 flat head cap screw. So that's what that is, okay? All right. Those are always torqued to, any M6 bolt like this would be torqued to 10 Newton meters. Doesn't matter how long they are, it's 10 Newton meters. This is called a socket head cap screw. This is a different head on it. So this is a socket head cap screw, and this is a flat head cap screw. You can see the difference there. All right. This is a regular M6 washer. This is an M6 split washer. You see it's called a split washer because it has that little split there, right there. And it's a locking washer. This is a M6 fender washer. It's called a fender washer because it's wider and it's used on cars back in the day. They used to use these on the fenders to align the fenders. So that's why it's called a fender washer. This is a regular M6 nut. All right, nothing special about that. And this is a nylock nut, and you can see it has a little nylon ring around it. We do not reuse those. Once you take that off, that is garbage. This is an M8. This is an M8 flathead or taperhead cap screw. This is what we use on the barriers of the carts. That's where you would use that, and that has to be flush with the plastic on the side so it doesn't grab any other plastic from any other carts. And this is an M8 socket head cap screw. And on these ones, if you ever need to know the length, they don't measure them the total length, they measure them from the bottom of the head. So this one would be a 30. So this would be an M8 by 30 socket head cap screw. That is what technically that one is. And this is just a regular M8 bolt, hex head bolt. This is a regular M8 washer. An M8 split washer. You'd use these on the wheels. See, it's got the split in it. All right. M8 fender washer. This is a M8 nut. All right, nothing special there. And an M8 nylock nut, again with a little nylon ring around there. This is an M10, so it's 10 millimeters across. All right, 10 millimeters across. And this is a taper head, an M10 taper head cap screw. This is an M10 socket head cap screw. And this is a M10 bolt. This is what we use on the for a sprint cart. They come in different lengths, of course. Then you have your washer, your split washer, your nut, all right, regular old nut, and your nylock nut. Okay, so any M6 bolt is torqued to 10 Newton meters. Any M8 is torqued to 24 Newton meters. Any M10 is torqued to 35 Newton meters, but you don't need to know that because we never torque there's no bolts that no M10 bolts that we use that we ever have to properly torque, so don't worry about that. Now, you'll notice this nut here looks remarkably like that nut there. If I hold them up side by side, there's almost no difference there in them, but they are very different. This is not a metric. This is a standard size, okay? This is a 5/16. It is, no, I'm sorry, this is a 3/8, and it is almost identical to the M8 nuts that we use on the carts, except this is used on a couple of places. This is called a carriage bolt. You see how it's flush like that, and that's what we use on the barriers. That is a standard size, and that is where this nut would be used. Okay, that flips on there very easily, but that is very different than one of these M8 bolts. It will not thread on there. It gets stuck, and This brings up an important point. Anytime you're threading a bolt on, you should be able to get it started by hand. If you cannot get it started by hand, there is a problem. Do not attempt to use a tool to force it on. That will not work. It's going to result in something getting broken. The same nut, 3/8 nut, is used on these U-bolts that we use to hold the side plates on the karts. All right. And there's another nut we use. That is a standard. This is a 1/4 inch nut, and this is used on these throttle pieces. Okay. Do not confuse the 1/4 nut and the M6 nut. They are not interchangeable in any way. Okay. These are kept in the same place I keep these. There's a whole bunch of these, okay? And these are also used on this part of the throttle cable. All right, spins on there very easily. Again, you should always be able to spin a nut on by hand before tightening it with a tool. Don't ever attempt to tighten it with a tool until you've threaded it on by hand. This is a rod end. This rod end is a left-hand thread rod end. So notice that when I'm spinning it, what normally would spin it on, it actually spins it off. See that? It's because it's left-hand thread. Don't ever try to confuse these. It's an M8, but it is an M8 with a left-hand thread, so everything works in the opposite direction. These are hanging up on the wall, and the left-hand thread nuts are on the rod ends, so there should be no confusion with that. But again, don't ever try to force it. If it doesn't go easily, that you can do it by hand, don't do it. Okay. Now, the other thing that is not really a nut or a bolt, but you need to thread it in, is a spark plug. Okay. Now, this is the head of a kart. I've taken it off a kart to illustrate. But this head is just aluminum. It's very soft metal. It's not steel like the rest of the nuts and bolts. Those are actually all hardened steel. They take a lot of abuse. This aluminum head will not take abuse. So when you're putting a spark plug in, make sure that the threads of the spark plug look good. All right. You need to thread it in by hand. You need to get it started. All right. And you need to get the angle just perfect. The spark plug is at a slight angle. Notice that spark plug, it does not sit in there perfectly straight. So it is at an angle, and you need to get that angle perfect for it to thread in there. Now, you may have all this stuff like the throttle mechanism and all that stuff in your way, and you're having a hard time getting your fat fingers in there to get the spark plug going. Well, here's a little trick that you learn when you work on cars. Take a hose. In this case, we got a little bit of fuel line. All right, shove it on the end of the spark plug like that. Now you get it down there, and you can do this, and you can like sort of use the hose, and you can thread it in there. See? And once you've threaded it all the way down by hand, then you can take your spark plug socket. Now the interesting thing about a spark plug socket is it's a special socket because inside there's a round piece of rubber that's a rubber ring, and it keeps from breaking this porcelain part right here, okay? So that's what a spark plug socket does. So you put the spark plug on there and then tighten it up. Don't go crazy on it. You don't need to tighten it up like it's one of these bolts that you have to torque it crazy amounts. Not necessary. So that is today's lesson on nuts and bolts. Hope this helps.